Welcome everybody to another edition of the In the Paint Show presented by Ball is Life, episode 163. We keep going forward. We thank everybody for tuning in each week, listening on Spotify and iTunes and on our YouTube page. So make sure to go subscribe to that, like our episodes. Again, 163 here with Chelsea Hopkins and Anya Mana. Chelsea, talk a little bit about your guys' latest triumph on the grassroots scene. I believe you were in Dallas and the Dallas region, and what happened out there?
Yes. Excuse my voice, but my AAU team this weekend, we were in Dallas. I was coaching 14 and under in the Clash of the Clubs, which is a Nike sponsored tournament. And we just ran through it. I mean, my girls, they were on point. My 14U in our program is probably the most talented group that we have. They've been playing together, so the chemistry is like really high level. They have about 3 years together under their belt, and just talent wise, like they're just really, really good. So they pushed me. They pushed me to challenge them, to, you know, make them focus on the little details, because we beat a lot of teams just based on talent alone. But I was happy the way that we were able to play, and we had a couple close games in the end where we really had to fight to get the trophy, and they did that. So it was a success. We have another one this weekend, Memorial Tournament in Vegas. So just busy with my girls, but I'm having fun.
Great. Ani, how's it going, man? Did you go to I heard you was a attorney director this weekend.
I was helping my boy TJ with Tex Impact. He ran his event. There was some good, local shoot teams like Southern Assault. Team Curry from North Carolina came in. So I got to double dip, work and watch some basketball. And, I know Chelsea was coaching hard, when the voice being gone. That means she was doing something.
So Chelsea, were you lighting up? You got a victory cigar? Or what you got going on? Or is it real screaming? Why are you losing your voice?
I'm a yeller, man.
I was a yeller
player. I'm a yeller as a coach. I'm working with young kids, so not so much yelling at them, but yelling what we're in, being fired up.
Sure.
So yes, I lost my voice, and I have to get it back because I have to yell again on Friday. We have a game at 7, so hopefully it comes back to me.
Yeah. Now give us one or two girls that we're gonna see on the high school scene and maybe beyond. Even if it's in your guys' program and not necessarily on your 14U team. Well, give us one or two girls that we're going to be either talking about on this pod, or we're going to see, a pretty good level.
Let's see. In our program, we have a youngin'. Her name is Kiani, nicknamed Bubbles. She is a 2026. She's a point guard.
Wow.
She reminds me a lot of myself, just very crafty, has great pace to her game, can get downhill, creates like crazy. And she's a real dog on defense. So she's kind of finding her identity. I'm trying to get her to be more locked in as a true point, because she's kind of in between right now. And she's small. So I'm hoping that she gets a little growth spurt. I told her that I was a late bloomer too, and that I grew 2 inches after my senior year in high school going to Duke. So she's about 5'5", maybe 5'6" right now. But she's super talented, and she's going to be a very high level Division I recruit. So I'm looking forward to helping her in her process. So you guys will hear about her very, very soon.
Wow, that's awesome. So 5'5", 226 point guard. Great. Okay, so what else is going on? What's the latest in basketball? I guess we're going to have a Miami Heat, Denver Nuggets final, looks like, most likely. Obviously, we're shooting with Denver already eliminated the Lakers earlier this week, and Miami is, up 3-0 on Boston. So obviously this rigged thing for a big city market is not really happening. Ani, what do you see there? It's just the better team, the hotter teams. I don't know what to say. Chelsea was kind of liked Miami a bit, but I guess what do you think there? And then we'll get Chelsea's opinion.
I think we're getting the better teams, but I think we're getting the best coach teams as well. I think Spoelstra and Denver's doing a really good job. They're doing a really good job. I mean, just adjusting. I mean, Denver was down 15 at half. Made a couple adjustments, got into a run early in the third quarter. I just think that, Miami, just how they're guarding Boston, and Boston's still kind of playing like my turn, your turn with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And then Miami's really just moving the basketball, and other guys like Gabe Vincent, Max Strauss, Jimmy Butler, Bam. Like they're just kind of sharing the wealth and getting a lot of ball movement. I just think we're seeing the best teams, but I think we're seeing the best coach teams as well, winning these series.
Yeah. And what do you think, Chelsea?
I mean, I totally agree with Ani. My prediction was halfway right because I picked Miami just based off of just what I've already seen. The toughness of that group, the coaching of that group, the leader of that group in Jimmy Butler, who has just been exceptional and arguably the best player in the playoffs. I think Boston, they kind of broke their spirit. From the last game that I watched, it got very out of hand. They were down like 30 at one point. And I just think, we have to get past this narrative that, Miami, really wasn't supposed to be here and wasn't ready for this moment because they ran through everybody. Like, what can you honestly say? And they're not barely beating Boston. They're destroying Boston. And it will likely end in a sweep or a gentleman's sweep today or in the next couple of days. And I think they're just very deserving. As far as Denver goes, I'm heartbroken for my boy LeBron, but Denver was the better team. Yeah. I mean, just watching those games, I saw games that the Lakers should have won, but they weren't able to close because of the resiliency, because of the coaching, because of the matchup a little bit. I think Denver's size bothered the Lakers. The Warriors were a smaller team. They were able to do more things, mixing it up defensively. But it seemed like every time the Lakers felt like they were on to something, Denver was able to counter and answer. So as much as it hurt my feelings, they definitely deserve to be there. And ultimately, I think it's good for the game to have two teams that nobody really predicted to be there or nobody really wanted to be there. Like that's great for basketball. And I like that Ani touched on, that narrative that everybody wanted Lakers in Boston. But this is the beauty of the game. The teams that are going to be there are going to be there. And it's preparing us for an exciting finals, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the basketball, I think, in the final is going to be well played. Like you said, it may not be the media darling final and this Lakers, Boston going for their 18th title, that type of thing. Historic. It doesn't matter. The better team, like you said, the better teams are the stronger teams. And, it didn't, like you said, the Lakers counter. I kind of figured the Lakers in the final game 4, they were playing pretty well, but they seemed a little gassed at the end of the second quarter. And they really didn't put it on Denver. I was like, okay, Denver's just going to start with the run. They're going to get within 5 points in the third quarter. They're not going to, not like the Lakers are going to stretch the lead to 25. Yeah. It just didn't seem that way. No matter what, like Chelsea said, no matter what they did, they were going to make a little run. And like you said, the youth size, having the best player at the time. And it's just that simple. But other things in the game are not that simple. So let's talk a little bit about the bigger picture items. Let's start with Boston because, again, looked like they had almost a dynasty in the making. Then Brad Stevens goes to the front office. They hire who seems to be a good coach. He gets fired or let go because of off the court issues, and now it happened fast. Like, where is this team at? Do they need to blow it up? Do they just need a veteran coach? Ani, I'm pretty sure you're going to say they need a point guard. But besides needing a true point guard, what does Boston need? Like, give up on this core or no? Just get a veteran coach.
I think you got to go with about one more year. To be honest with you, point guard definitely. You just need more. Flow into the offense. I just think the way Jaylen Brown and Tatum are getting used because of a lack of a PG of more of maybe a traditional guard. You kind of see where the struggles are. I just think the offense needs to be better. I think Joe Mazzulla is going to be fine. I don't think he's a bad coach. I just think this is a lot right now. I think he's done a good job this season, and I think he may be losing a locker. It just looks like from outside looking in, maybe the losing locker room just a little bit right now. Like you said, I think Game 3 just really crushed those guys. But I think going forward, you go for it for one more year. You get you a better PG, and you just try to figure out how to kind of get better flow in your offense. I think defensively, there's no problem. You're getting Robert Williams healthy. I think Al Horford's doing a solid job just with his role. Brogdon, Derek White, like you got pieces. I just think it's just some little things. But I will go for another year. Next year, you don't win the title, then blow it up.
Okay, Chelsea, you think the same thing, or you think some bigger changes need to be made?
Well, I'll start with Joe Mazzulla. I'll be shocked if he is still the coach next season. To be honest, we're seeing the way that they move on from coaches when
Yeah.
they're not very successful. So I will honestly be shocked if he's the coach. I do feel like he's lost the locker room, and I don't feel like the Celtics would be in this situation if Ime was still there. I really just believe that. I think teams start with leadership. Eric Spoelstra is a fierce leader, a fierce coach who is able to rally whoever he has around him, to be successful and maybe even perform above, expectations. And I don't think Joe Mazzulla has been able to get the most out of the players and the roster as is. I think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are too dynamic. I wouldn't want to give up on breaking them up so soon. I've heard reports that Jaylen Brown, might want to go back to Atlanta, that maybe he's not super happy. But I just feel like it's all about the pieces around those two. So I totally agree with Ani in terms of, pieces that they need to add to change the style of play. Because Ani's very much right. It's your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn, ISO basketball. And we've seen teams that were heavily, that you said that have that style of play and they weren't able to be successful.
Right.
Like we talk about James Harden, who used to do this with the Rockets all the time. And yeah, they would make a deep playoff run, but they could never get over the hump.
Sure.
So I think, Tatum and Brown are young. I would try to keep them together as much as I can, but you definitely need the people around them. Maybe, Al Horford is a great vet, but, you always need vet leadership, in my opinion. And it starts with the coach. So I will be totally shocked if Joe Mazzulla is the coach next year after the way that they've underwhelmingly performed in this series.
Yeah.
Ronnie, man, what's up with these coaches getting fired? Like, I mean, Joe kind of got put in a tough situation, Chels. Like,
yeah,
I agree, but
yeah, but you're right. Like, that's how it's going. It just, of course, he's probably gonna. I don't think he was put in a situation where he was going to gain the trust of the locker room if there was going to be some obstacles in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, they all still wanted Ime to be there. So once they get to a point where they see some like, oh man, like we're struggling, of course they're not gonna listen to Joe. Like, I just feel like he never really had it unless it just went real smooth. He was gonna lose that locker room at some point.
Yeah, it's happened to some good teams, and then something happens and it changes up. So like you said, it anything could break up a good team. Like when you look at this team from 5 years from now, maybe they'll win a title, but you're going to say, man, they got broken up because of what? Like Nia Long, what? It's just like, that's just a crazy situation. But so that shows you about the professionalism of some guys that is like, they put those things to the side and they overcome those things. It's kind of like when you watch The Last Dance, if you didn't really know all the back end and you're seeing Dennis Rodman wants to leave to go party in Vegas. Like, you have to be able to handle those things. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, some teams handle them better than others. And to the current players, to vouch for the current players, it's much harder to do stuff like that and get away with it than like players of 30, 40 years ago. Like, everybody's under a bubble, under a microscope. So, but you got to put those things aside and work it out, like you said. And I also think we mentioned it last week a little bit in our last pod 162. The attention spans are not that long, not as great. So if you don't have like locked in, again, like what Chelsea says, Miami's doing a great job of it. They lost, like it's only been a year. It hasn't even been a full year, and he's already like quote unquote lost the locker room. Like, what's going on? Like he said, it's so fast. I think it's a little bit of shortcomings of the makeup of the roster, to be honest with you, as well. Like you said, too much ISO ball. You better have a good season. If you're going to move Jaylen Brown, he better have a good season next year because he's going to lose value. Right. Like the boy don't dribble good enough. And it's, things like that. Like little things that make a team great, Like if you look at Denver, they seem to figure it out with like Porter's kind of, just a catch and shoot guy, but he has his good moments. Like, whereas in the past, he had little moments of selfishness. He doesn't really. Now he's rebounding a little bit better, So like little things like that make a big difference, in my opinion. So I'm kind of with you guys. I'm not sure it'll be the coach, but I don't know what big moves they can make. But if they're going to make a move, it's probably going to have to be at next year's trade deadline, I would imagine. So they're going to like, hey, this ain't working. You know what I mean? If they're not in first or second place in the East. So we'll see how that goes. Now, how about let's go move to the West. Obviously, the Lakers got swept, but we forget they were 2-10. They weren't very good at the trade deadline. So I mean, I thought Darvin Ham did a good job. Just, no matter what they were going to do, they were a little short. But I thought they have some good pieces. But again, LeBron's 38 years old. He'll be 39. AD, that it's a good core. Chelsea, we'll start with you. Do they obviously, we're looking at LeBron and he can play definitely a few more years. What style of play does he have? He obviously wants to play with his son. Does that make sense on this Lakers team in his last years, or if he's going to do that, is that going to be on another team?
I think it'll be on another team. I personally, I'm a fan of Bronny. Yeah. I've kind of advocated for him when people said he wasn't deserving of, all different things. But I just don't see him being a one and done player. I will say that. Sure. I feel like he needs 2 years minimum of college. So I feel like Bron is going to have to hold out if he has aspirations of playing with him. I also think, just back to the Lakers, that, LeBron, as incredible as he is in his own right, if he is your first or second best player, I don't think the team is going to be that great. I think that he has transitioned into a third best player type of role, and that's okay. I mean, that's not a knock on LeBron. He's about to be 39 years old. What I saw was the lack of sustainability. Sure. Like, LeBron could get up for one game, and then we wouldn't see it again, for 2 more games. I saw a lot of him settling for jumpers. And I know what he was doing because I did that too when this past season. When I'm tired, I'm not going to the basket. I don't want to be touched and I don't want to drive to the basket. So you shoot a 3. So I just feel like, LeBron's older and I think he's still a very formidable NBA player. He still easily can be a top 10 player, top 15 player. He can easily get you 20 points on any given night. But I feel like we were relying way too much on this 38-year-old to be who he was, 3 years ago in the bubble or, even prior to that. And it's just not sustainable. So sure. The inconsistency in Anthony Davis makes me believe that there needs to be a number 2 or maybe even a number 1 and AD goes to number 2 because he's inconsistent and up and down as well. So I would like to see them try to keep this group, at least some of the players together. I feel like Reeves has been incredible. I don't know if they can keep him money-wise. Rui has been incredible. They have really good pieces, but I think they're one guy away. And I would like to see LeBron step back into that third guy slot and have, the other 2, maybe younger, maybe players that are in their prime be able to carry more. I think that's going to be the key for the Lakers to be successful moving forward.
No, I agree with you. It's very interesting because LeBron really is more like a third guy on a championship team. What assets do you have to get a legit number 2 is a thing. Do you trade Rui or do you develop Rui and make him number 2? Is Anthony Davis a legit number 1 throughout the whole season? How you rest him and how you develop, how you manage him during the season is going to be a big thing. I agree LeBron's a 3, but you're going to have a third all-star. And that guy's got to be like a 20-point per game scorer to relieve AD and LeBron when they're out. What does that look like? Does LA have the trade assets to do that? No, I don't think they have the trade assets to really do that, to get a legit 2. I think they could probably bolster the roster a little bit, maybe add a little bit more depth. But I don't think you either have to develop or you just have to really steal. You have to commit highway robbery on a trade. LeBron, Bronny, I think he'll go 24 draft. He'll probably go. They'll figure something out. Is it with LA? That'll be 24, 25 season. That's going to be up in the air. Who knows? But he's going to probably play where LeBron is. That's that's my opinion. However way that looks like. But for LA, you got to have a really good offseason. You guys going to have to develop, and you got to be smart with who you sign and who you trade and the stuff you got coming back. Because what's going to be big again is going to the season. What LA was an AC this year. You had to kind of go through it to get to the playoffs. Then you meet Denver. I don't think LA had enough legs to really win that series. Denver's the better team, but I think LA got worn out, to be honest with you. So you're going to have pieces that during the regular season, you're not playing in the play-in. You're not, you have a decent enough seed where it's still going to be hard to get to the West Finals, but you're not killing AD and LeBron, to get to that point. So you just got to be strategic and smart.
Yeah. The Lakers, again, with this core, they're going to be like a load management team completely next year, to get like you see it's working, it worked a bit for a few teams this year. So we could see that with the veteran teams. I'm kind of with you, Ani. I know Chelsea thinks Bronny should do 2 years of college. I just think whether it's so far away, I just don't, is LeBron going to be on the Lakers in 24, 25? With this roster, it's so hard to predict. He's obviously going to probably still be playing, and then that'll be his last season. Whichever season Bronny is playing, I think that will be his last season. And it'll be a crazy story. And speaking of a crazy story, we're going to talk about something we're mentioning LeBron and his son. It's crazy how much time has passed by. LeBron is 38 going on 39. He was born in December 1984. And right around that time, Nike was trying to get this new Air Jordan concept off the ground. So we're going to talk about that, or the movie Air, Courting of a Legend. We got to speak to our special guest, very special guest we had on the pod. He's been on the pod before. He was on the pod, unfortunately, in talking about a horrible situation the last time he was on the pod, which was the death of Kobe Bryant 3 years ago now. So this time it's much, much, much more uplifting. So we're glad that he's coming back on in a much more uplifting sense. So a little bit while later, we're going to talk about that movie, Air, the Courting of a Legend. It dropped in theaters March of 2020 in April, March and April. I believe the screening was like in late March. And then they decided, hey, this got good reviews and we should send it to the big screen. I think it was going to originally just come on to like a streaming, but then they realized it did pretty well in their tests. Or again, I'm not a Hollywood expert, but however they figure that out, and it is doing pretty well. I mean, the movie's being talked about, and it's obviously courting Michael Jordan after his junior year, going to the draft to sign an endorsement deal. And it's just similar to what a player would do now. Obviously, times are different, and the courting's a lot different. But it was a thing that changed the NBA, changed the world. Really, if you really think about it and look about it. And again, that situation with Sonny Vaccaro, who's our special guest on remembering Kobe Bryant. That was episode 54, and we're going to reference a lot of the old episodes this week because if you tie this all in, it all ties into what we're talking about with this movie. And it's a lot of subjects we've hit on prior. And before we move that, I have one more question about this NBA playoffs for you guys. And it's kind of regarding expectations, greatness, I guess LeBron a bit, Kareem, Jordan. And it's like Miami was a low seed, wasn't expected to get here. They're one win away from the finals as we shoot this pod. But there was an interesting thing that happened when they eliminated the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Milwaukee Bucks since fired their coach. But there was a statement made about the season being a failure, or quote unquote a failure for the Bucks. And Giannis had something to say about that at the time. Seems like a long time ago, Chelsea, but I know we wanted to hit on it before we moved on. Again, because now we're looking at you firing Milwaukee's coach, but it's like, how about if Miami wins the title? Like, Milwaukee wasn't that bad, just like they ran into the wrong team at the wrong time. So, Chelsea, what transpired and what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, so Giannis was asked by a reporter would he consider the season a failure?
Yeah.
And Giannis kind of snapped and just was basically making the point that, it's a process to be successful. There's steps to success. He gave an analogy or an example of Michael Jordan. He's saying that he won 6 titles, so the rest of his seasons were all failures if he didn't win the championship.
Sure.
Giannis isn't wrong, in my opinion, but I didn't like the take. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I feel like he lacked accountability for the way that he personally played, in my opinion. It gave defensive to me. It gave, just lack of accountability. Giannis in that game missed 13 free throws. I mean, in that game, arguably best player in the world, didn't want the ball at the end of the game because he knew he would get fouled and have to go shoot.
Yeah.
He got the ball one time and damn near turned it over because he was trying to get rid of it so fast. Yeah. So when I see somebody that's like Giannis, who is, a best player in the world, obviously the leader and the best player on that team, it was a failure in a sense because your team expectations were not reached. So he took it as the reporter asking him, making it seem like Giannis is a personal failure, which of course he's not. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's a league MVP. He's a champion. He personally is not a failure, but the way that their team performed when the expectation was pretty much championship, they failed in that season. So I didn't personally like it. I understood where he was coming from. And I also understand that being a player, when you come off a loss like that, it's super frustrating. So maybe a little bit of emotions got the best of him in that moment, but he didn't perform. And he got his coach fired because he didn't perform. And that ultimately is what it boils down to, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, Chelsea, I see you're taking a hard stance and you're kind of like saying, hey, be accountable. Ani, do the better players or the great players it's going to be tough, especially in this microwave analyzing we do every day on Twitter and social media. Like, what do you take about Giannis' statement? And then now if Miami wins, he could be like, see, I mean, shit, like maybe the Bucks weren't that bad. They just ran into a bad stretch. Maybe you have a different opinion.
No, if he looks at Miami's run right now, he should be like, damn, that could have been us. That should have been us. I think you're the number one team in the NBA, number one seed, and you lost in the first round. I think that is a failure. I mean, from a team perspective and from what he wants out of his NBA career, you can't look at that season and say it's not a failure. And path to success, there are failures, right? Yeah. So like this was a failure of a season from a team perspective. That's okay. I just think it sounded like Giannis was already hearing enough stuff as it is, and he just was like, man, I'm just tired of y'all coming at me. Yeah. That's kind of more what it sounded like. But he knows this was a failure of a season. Like, come on, dog. Like, you can't have a 55-win season, number one overall team in the NBA, and lose in the first round to a team that lost the first game of the play-in game. Like, Miami's a great team. Like, but don't they have like 9 undrafted guys? Like, and listen, not trying to downplay Miami. I'm just saying you're supposed to be the best team in the NBA, and you lost in the first round to a team that barely got in. And you're telling me that the season wasn't a failure from your team? Yeah. Like, come on, man. Like, you know that. You just tired of hearing people talk shit about you. Like, that's what it is.
Correct. And we ain't got to spend much time on it, but you guys take a hard stance, and I like that because, I think the players are getting a little too sensitive when people ask them questions. Like, the guys are just doing their job. Like for the most part, and then once in a while they could be out of line, but most of the time I don't think they're out of line. They're just asking hard questions, and I will say this: the media doesn't have the stance they once did, and doesn't have the power or the authority that they once did. Local sports writers and when NBA and other sports leagues were getting off the ground and making money, they had a lot of juice. Mm-hmm. Even the owners would sometimes come to the sports writers and be like, hey, we're about to make this trade. What do you guys think? They had a lot of input in a lot of different cities. I remember the one example I could give is like the again, the world was way different. Elmira Express, the story of Ernie Davis. He was the first African-American Heisman Trophy winner, and teams were passing on him. And like the local papers were like, no, for the Browns, They wanted him, and the sports writers had a lot to do with it, So, things like that used to have a lot more juice. Again, the players were almost making the same amount of money as the sports writers. So it was a lot different until like the early 70s. Even my buddy Harold DeBen, who's a sports writer still, and he's covers the girls basketball, as you know, Chelsea a lot. He used to do some covering of the Warriors in the 70s. It was a lot different then. Those guys would drive out of the same parking lot, go to different night establishments or dinners. They'd see each other. They were peers. So there was a lot of respect. Now when you have a guy making $80 million and a guy making, $70,000, there's a disconnect in discourse. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I think sometimes the players get a little too, they're a little too thin, sensitive on it. And like, hey, those are hard things and things you got to deal with. And I will say that a guy like let's just say again, Magic and Bird are easy to talk about. Like, yeah, you're right, Ani. Giannis got to just improve his free throw shooting, like, and just too, like, towards the end of their career, Magic and Bird were both in the 90th percentile. They had improved a lot. Magic improved a lot. People say, oh, he can shoot, that kind of thing. Like, he got a lot better. You got to get better. So we'll see how it goes next year for them. Before we jump into talking about air, let's quickly hit our predictions for the finals. Again, you guys kind of mentioned it. Is Miami still playing with the house money because where they're coming from? Meaning the pressure. We talked about the pressure being on Milwaukee, and the pressure was kind of on Phoenix, and Denver has that, hey, they're the top seed, they should get there. Is that playing into any effect? And also, if Miami sweeps Boston, the series doesn't start to June 1st. That's a while. Does that have any take on the final? So I'll start with you, Chelsea. Miami still playing with house money, and then the big break.
I think momentum is everything. I think Miami is, playing their best basketball. People are saying that they're kind of playing above their heads, but I don't think so. When you have good momentum, anything can happen. I was reading that Miami as a team is shooting like maybe 12% higher from three than they did in the regular season. They're about to get Tyler Hero back. I mean, he's a good piece. I hope he doesn't mess up kind of the flow, because we've seen a lot of good good results from Duncan Robinson, who was inserted back into the lineup upon Tyler Hero's absence. Gabe Vincent, Ani mentioned a lot of their undrafted players, but these guys play with the chip. They play like they have something to prove, and I think that matters. I'm going to stick with my Miami prediction, even though I think Denver is great. I think I give Eric Spoelstra the edge in terms of coaching. It's going to be a long series. I would say Miami might have to do it on Denver's home floor. Could be Miami in 7 if I had to give a prediction today. I'm very interested to see the Bam Joker matchup. I think that's going to be, obviously Joker's still going to do his thing, but I think Bam's athleticism and physicality might bother Joker a little bit. Jimmy Butler and Jamal Murray. Jimmy is the ultimate dog in this league. He takes everything so personal. So, although Jamal Murray in his own right is building his name back up, I watched his interview with Taylor Rooks, and he mentioned that he thinks people forgot about how good he is. So, he's playing with a chip on his shoulder as well. But I like that matchup between him and Jimmy Butler. It's going to be very, very tough series and fun to watch, but I'm going to go with Miami in 7.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go Denver in 6. I don't think, to answer your question, Ronnie, I don't think, when you get to the finals, you ain't playing with house money no more. Like, especially when you're Jimmy Butler, who, you don't have a whole lot of time. Like, you're he's probably in the latter part of his prime, right? Sure. How many more years can he really just do this in the playoffs? Just my opinion. Like, he probably has a 3-year window. And so when you're in the finals and you're Jimmy, like, you gotta, they gotta make it happen. So, but I think Denver in 6. I'll be interested to see. And I hate picking against Miami because Miami's they're just really good. Not necessarily Jokic and Bam matchup. Is more, how does Miami guard Jokic? Is it like, do they put Bam as more of a help side defender? Who do they put on him to kind of frustrate him? Seems like smaller, like physical guys that can kind of get in his personal space more, kind of bother Jokic. So just be interested to see like who they put on him, how they guard him, what read, kind of switch up on what reads he needs to make. And then, Jimmy's going to switch on and off with Jamal Murray. Jimmy's a really good defender, but he's not going to guard him the whole time. I mean, they're going to need him on offense. On offense as well. But I think Denver in 6. I think Jokic is the best player on the court. I think Jamal's going to be solid. I think Michael Porter, all those guys. It's going to be tough, but I think Denver will have the slight edge because I think Denver could also match up well against Miami defensively. I think they can kind of get Miami more hell on the defense end than Boston and there's other guys have. And I think Boston could too. I just think Boston hasn't made the right adjustments. But I say Denver in 6.
Okay. I'll go with Ani on this one, Chelsea. I just think Denver, like we said, the Lakers are just better. I think they're just a little bit better. And then they could just switch Aaron Gordon on. Bam. They could switch different guys. And I am a little interested in seeing what Tyler Hero would do when he comes back. I kind of think about that Rafer Alston, Jameer Nelson. They were playing really good against Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. Orlando gets to the finals as a young team, a hot team, and then they bring back Jameer, and it doesn't work against the Lakers. So I'll be interested to see that. But again, they have a big break. This is as we're shooting, it's May 23rd. So no matter what happens in that series, in this game 4, it's going to start on June 1st. I don't know if you guys think that makes a big difference. Probably not. They just rest. Most teams seem both teams to see. Let me rephrase my phrase. Both teams seem to be pretty healthy, so I don't think it makes a big difference. It doesn't seem like any team has a big injury. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. We'll see if Chelsea's pick comes through. You know, if Miami wins, this will be one hell of a story. That's for sure.
Right.
And I'm sure Jimmy Butler, if they do win, he's going to have 2 or 3 monster games. I mean, like 40, 10, 7, 2 steals, 3 blocks kind of games. Mm-hmm. So he's probably capable. I think he'll have 1 or 2. Will he have 3 or 4 though? That would be, we'll see. So that'll be exciting. But again, we'll switch to our main topic this week. It's just a fun topic. Obviously, this movie came out, during this spring, Air Courting of a Legend. I think the first thing that comes to my mind on this is just what a great cast it was. Our guest Sonny Vaccaro had a chance to spend time with the cast, and they did a great job. They got some input from Michael Jordan, even though he wasn't really part of the movie itself. It was more like some things that he wanted told, and obviously it's Hollywood, so a little bit of it's embellished, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And Matt Damon plays Sonny Vaccaro, marketing executive who's also runs a Dapper Dan Roundball Classic, the first National High School All-Star Game. He had been doing it at that time for well over 10 or 15 years. By the time he got, became like a consultant and or employee of Nike. He's going to talk about that a little bit when that happened. I didn't really know too much about exactly when that happened, but he'd been running his game since 1965. So in the late 70s, it's a little over 10 years. Ben Affleck plays Phil Knight, who's obviously the Nike czar. This company that's a fledgling company a bit and is into the aerobics craze. Obviously, you Chelsea and Yanni, you guys weren't around then, but in the mid-early 80s, this crazy aerobics. Everybody was getting into shape. I guess America was kind of falling out of shape a little bit, and everybody liked these Jane Fonda workouts and this aerobic. Everybody started running. Everybody started buying nice, running shoes and out running sweat outfits, and it just hit a big craze. And I think it was the early 80s. Seemed to be about the early 80s, and Nike was kind of at the forefront of that. But that was their focus, and that was kind of where they were at. But in the basketball space, they were clearly number 3. Converse was there, and Adidas was kind of a hot and upcoming company. Adidas kind of resonated with the young crowd, more the urban crowd, the metro crowd. Just the clothes, the styles. It was hot, and college basketball was still a lot of Converse, and even pro kids had their little niche in the market. So that was kind of Phil Knight. And Viola Davis played Dolores Jordan, obviously Michael Jordan's mom. She's a well-known actress and did a good job in the movie. Again, I think that was Michael Jordan's input. I don't know how much of a relationship he had with her, or maybe he just thought she would do a great job, and she did do a good job. And then Jason Bateman, who's a well-known actor, plays Rob Strasser, who kind of is the mystery man in the movie. A marketing president for Nike, and he kind of had a lot of input. I don't think a lot of the public knows him, and his input in there. And then Marlon Wayans played George Raveling, who's kind of instrumental in connecting Sonny and Michael Jordan. So I'll start with you, Chelsea. You watched this movie. It's kind of a long time ago. The movie's supposed to be a long time ago. And what did you take away from the movie?
Well, I for one was super intrigued by the movie. At least today, I am very much a Nike enthusiast. So I just learned a lot of stuff that I guess I never really even thought of. My generation especially, I can't imagine a world where Nike at the forefront.
Okay.
Like Nike is so prevalent I have, 120 pairs of Nikes in my closet. Like I just can't even imagine them being on the back burner. So I just felt like this movie really educated me in terms of that, seeing their climb to kind of greatness and it being, dependent upon one man's idea to get behind a specific player. So I really liked it. It was super informative. I thought the movie was a little slow. I will say that, although the the actors and the actresses, especially Viola, who's one of my favorites, did a very good job.
Sure.
And so, just my biggest takeaway was just kind of learning stuff that I didn't know before. Just kind of seeing Nike's rise to greatness, and kind of processing it now to see how they're still, the leading, sportswear brand, to this day, and probably all facets. I think maybe Adidas dominates soccer, but in every other realm, Nike's probably number one. Just to see how just that basketball kind of boom, positioned them to just be in the forefront in all aspects, and I thought it was super interesting.
Gotcha. Ani, for you, obviously, you spent a lot of time in the grassroots circuit, and just the circuit itself, and how big the business is. Did you see it growing just from, kind of like, hey, we don't know too much about these players. They get picked for this all-star game. Sonny makes his rounds. He has his contacts. There's obviously guys hit and miss. So now we have this big old cycle of events, recruiting, and it kind of boils from that. It boils from the round ball. It boils from Sonny's contacts, and then the shoe companies getting involved. Did you kind of see that in evolving, or is it for you too? Is it more like, hey, I like to rock Nikes as well, and I'm seeing how big this is, and it's big. It's so big you can't even get a grip on how big it is now.
Yeah, no, it's just seeing how it evolved, like with the shoe companies and just with the players now, and just like how guys even recruit, players for these grassroots teams, like the gear packages and stuff. It just, and then, kind of seeing the movie and then seeing how everything just started, like, how he, Sony kind of, talks about paying, college coaches and teams wearing their gear and stuff like that. Just seeing how everything's evolved down to the grassroots space is very interesting. Like how where it started to where it's now is, it's just crazy. Like high school kids get treated, just the recruiting wars for the shoe brands is another level.
Oh yeah. And it's crazy because, again, like you said, Sonny did go to games. Yeah, I don't know if you guys caught it, Chelsea, at the beginning. They kind of show him at Bishop Gorman recruiting a kid. It's like Sonny would make his little rounds. Sonny at that time, spend the winters, I believe, in Pittsburgh back home. If I'm not lying, he's from Stratford, PA, and he'd come out, to go back and do his round ball game, and then spend the rest of the time in Vegas and other West Coast cities. So he was always making a trek to the West. He had his good contacts. So, and then go back because the game was in Pittsburgh. The first 20 till 1992, the game was in Pittsburgh. So, then that's kind of, like he said, that kind of opened the doors for him completely. And you're right, Ani. Like, it's just crazy how, like, he didn't really know Jordan. Jordan wasn't in his game. And then he didn't really know him in college, didn't know Dean Smith, but had this connection because the Olympics were in LA. So George Raveling, played by Marlon Wayans, they got this 8 at Tony Roma's. That's one of the most famous stories in grassroots basketball, to be honest. And I'm glad they put that in the movie. And Sonny's going to talk a little bit about that in this interview we're going to have here coming up in a few minutes. So I just kind of wanted to give the background of, like, leading up, because as you said, Chelsea, the movie kind of reaches the zenith. But it's a short period of time. It's only the time of, like, Michael Jordan declaring for the draft after his junior year in 1984. They lost to Indiana in the NCAA tournament. They kind of underachieved, believe it or not. They were the preseason number one. people thought they had Sam Perkins, him, Kenny Smith was a freshman, but they got knocked off in the tournament. So it was like, is this guy going to come back? He was the college player of the year. And everybody thought Akeem Olajuwon was this, again, at that time, people looked at centers as, we got to draft the center, draft size. And they even mentioned that in the movie, like size, and then the Portland, where, obviously Nike's offices are in Beaverton. It's like, hey, they're going to take this Sam Bowie guy. And everybody's like, yeah, we need him. And then they could have really used Jordan, but they already had Clyde Drexler. So all that plays into it. And it goes back to what you're saying, Ani. And now high schools are outfitted in gear. You know what I mean? Like back then was kind of, Phil Knight kind of mentioned it in a heated moment to Sonny, like, we're outfitting these college teams. What the hell is it doing for us? It's just cutting into our budget. And like Sonny's like, yo, it's working, like, kind of thing. So now that, like you said, Ani, that's down to like 8th and 9th graders, like that's not a big deal. Like sending them care packages. And even after our interview, we can even talk about a little bit about like courting, and we probably will, the courting of like Kobe Bryant and LeBron, how just huge it was. But just a quick background for people who don't know, this is all in 1984. And obviously it's a short period of time from the time he goes to the draft, between the time they court him and the different shoe companies court him, and then he signs with Nike and then goes to his rookie season, which is 84-85. So Sonny started the Round Ball Classic in 1965 with his childhood friend and Pat DeCesar, who was a concert promoter. So they got the idea that Sonny was pretty young. He was about 24, 25. And Al Abrams, who was the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette sports editor and the president of the Dapper Dan Club, the Dapper Dan Round Ball Classic became in. He said, hey, I like your guys' idea. He's like, we have a big problem, though. And they're like, what? He's like, how about if we don't draw any damn fans? Who's going to pay for this? And that's where Pat DeCesar came in. He was a concert promoter. Al put the bill. And it's pretty funny because Sonny, just like anybody else, he was trying to get the best player in the country, which was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor. So he went to the big DeMatha game versus Power Memorial. It was at Coalfield House at Maryland, University of Maryland. Huge game, probably the biggest high school game ever. The founder of the McDonald's All-American game, Bob Gagan, was there. That's pretty interesting. The founder of the McDonald's All-American game was there, and he had this idea that high school basketball go to the big time. And Sonny had this idea. So Sonny's already knowing he's starting this game. And he's like, shit, I need this guy, Lou Alcindor. Everybody's talking about him. But like Adi, just like anything else, he didn't know anybody. He was a 24, 25-year-old guy. The coach wasn't playing that. He had his handlers were like, "Who get out of here? You can't get him." They didn't get him. So it was a blow, but they did draw a pretty good crowd. And then the second year they had a bigger crowd, and he was on. By the second year, he knew the game was going to stick around. So it did stick around. And then by the late 70s, he was starting to get the interest of people knowing, like, hey, who's these shoe companies were starting to gain, like, hey, we need to know who these players are if we're going to be promoting, throwing money at them. Who's the guy that knows all these players? And that was Sonny. So I think from that point, we'll let him kind of take over. And now we'll go to his interview. So we want to, get our special guest on right now. Now we'd like to welcome our special guest to the In the Paint show, Sonny Vaccaro, longtime sports marketing pioneer, talent scout executive, has touched everything within the grassroots realm of basketball. Sonny, thank you for joining us.
I'm honored to be here, and I get to meet a new friend. So that makes it very nice also when you keep meeting new people in your life. So this is going to be a good little conversation, Ron.
Yes, appreciate
Absolutely.
it, Sonny. Obviously, we're here to talk about the making of a legend and the signing of a legend. But we want to talk about a few items that are touched close to you as well. So go ahead, Ani.
Yeah, Sonny. EA Sports, their original co-defendant in the O'Bannon versus NCAA case. They're bringing back their college football game, and the FBS players, football players that are eligible to opt in, can get compensated for the work that you've done. How does it feel just now seeing this and the work you've been putting into for this to happen?
I got a wake-up call from someone on the East Coast the other day when the story broke, and it was a very good wake-up. I mean, it didn't excite me to a sense of excitement, whatever. Like what it did was gave me a smile to myself and sigh and say, thank God. 100 years later, some people got their free, because it all didn't just happen recently. And EA Sports admitting to what they should have done a long time ago, and there was no false errors, all the NCAA allowed me to smile for the thousands of kids that were able to cash in on it, but also be sad for the hundreds of thousands of kids that were never able to because of the NCAA. So it was a happy day uncovered by this sad pre-days,
Sure.
3 years.
Sonny, when you look back at it, when you were working with Nike, you had college teams wear, Nike apparel. You understood that was great advertising, and some at the time thought maybe paying the coaches was a radical idea. Now the public wasn't ready for it, but when did you know that the athletes, it was only proper that they be compensated, and when did the tide of public opinion on that start changing?
Well, Ron, when I knew that the athletes weren't being compensated isn't correct in the forming of my life.
Sure.
What I always believed are the athletes are the most important part to the word athletic and games played. And witness the fact that I did a high school all-star game in 1964, and I was 24 years old with my friend from Pennsylvania called the Dapper Dan Romball Classic.
Sure.
That game was the first all-star game 13 years before McDonald's ever had a game. And what did we do? We invited the parents and their children, or their guardians and their adopted kids and their coaches to be a part of this game, Now, that won't sink into the many people that are listening, watching right now, Ron. But what I said then was I couldn't have a game in Pittsburgh without these kids trusting me, or more important, the parents. So I basically had a mindset of being fair to the participants a long time ago. When it got to O'Bannon, and it got to, I wasn't applying for a job with Nike. O'Bannon came a lot later. What I did then was give the college, I paid the colleges, I give the colleges free shoes and equipment, and I paid the coaches money.
Sure.
And in 1977, I believe, when I started that program, they had one program, I think University of Oregon, Nike did, in the shoes, but they were giving them to them. And they had no one else, and they asked me because of that Dapper Dan game, because they came out and they saw that game. We had 17,000 people in the stand. That was the year of Wayne McCoy and Albert King and Eugene Banks. That was that great year, and we sold out the arena. But we sold out the arena from the day one. Now, to answer your question for your audience here, I would have paid the players in college because what did I say? What did I say when I told them? These kids will wear the shoes that you're paying the coaches the money to give to them.
Sure.
At that time, some schools on a lower level, not big time, and this is 77, kids bought their own shoes.
Yes.
They weren't all like, a school with a lot of money,
Yeah.
but down the line. So all the schools that we did. But let me say, and then go on to another question, Rob. The NCAA, the people that made the rule, never said a word about Sonny Vaccaro or Nike giving the coaches and the school free equipment so they can put on these shoes for those kids to wear. They're hypocrites. They started then. So my line of thinking started a long time ago, and it ended with, well, not ended. I live another day, and I can think of another idea. O'Bannon.
Gotcha.
Who recommended you to Phil Knight and Nike, and when did they start really trusting you in regards to, like you talked about, paying coaches and outfitting them with Nike gear?
Nobody recommended me, young fella. What I was interested in then, I was running a basketball camp in the late '60s after I had started the Dapper Dan Romball Classic to make a couple dollars in the summertime, and I had a young player who was at the camp come up to me out of the Kluger Sky, and I'm going to call him Charlie because I don't remember his name, and I've been saying this for 50 years. Charlie says, Mr. Vaccaro, why don't they make a tennis shoe? We call them tennis shoes in the 60s and 50s and 70s.
Sure.
That's in the tennis shoe. Why don't they make a tennis shoe that you could wear to the game or after the game, but just not playing basketball? Why can't, if they can go, I can wear it to church or I can wear it to the dance tomorrow night? Because then a kid, if you didn't have money in the eastern part of America, you had the winter season. There were two types of shoes for individuals that couldn't afford a lot of shoes. Okay, so we'll just say that. And I'd stuck in my mind because in the summertime, every kid that I knew, most of them, wore tennis shoes. And in the wintertime, they wore a clodhopper. A clodhopper was a piece of leather tied to a bottom. It goes up to your ankle. And we wore it that because it was warmer in the winter and you didn't have to, if you walked in the snow, your feet would be, I'm serious. So Charlie gave me that idea. I met Nike because of that idea. I called lawyer friends of mine, two big time, they're representing college players, which I started to know because the ABA was founded in the 70s and they were taking a lot of kids out of high school. And I knew everybody because most of those kids played in the Dapper Dan. It's no different than it was later on. I knew the kids. And so they asked me if I would, recommend players and they were going to come to the game and all that year. And I asked them a question. It was Jerry Davis and Louis Chaffel, major players. Louis was a lawyer. It represented a whole boatload of players in the later years. If they could introduce me to this new shoe company, I called it Nicky, that I just read about, and I would like to talk to them about a deal. My first idea of seeing Nike and Phil Knight was, could they make me a shoe the kid could wear? I had a shoemaker friend design one. He was very good. He ended up in the Shoemaker Hall of Fame one day from my little hometown in Pennsylvania. I took him in a barrel or a burlap sack out to Oregon, it would be in Oregon. I had 9 of them in a bag. They went out there. They invited me because of Jerry. They were big at that time. They took my shoes. I never saw them again. But we started talking about how can they get involved in basketball. Charlie. If there's no Charlie, I don't ask Louis to introduce me to a new shoe company.
Sure.
So my life has been like that. So they come. They see the Dapper Dan. They actually send Rob Strasser, who's in the movie, who was my boss in the movie.
Yes.
And he flies to Pittsburgh. We had, 17, 18,000 people sold out the Civic Arena. They invite me back. They say, how can we get involved in college basketball? And the words come out of my mouth, just like give it to the kid, pay the coaches.
Gotcha. That's a great part of the story. Now let's transition to the movie Air Sonny. Obviously, you're played by Matt Damon. Phil Knight's played by Ben Affleck. Michael's mother, Viola, is played by Dolores Jordan. Great cast. Jason Bateman plays Rob Strasser, as you mentioned, your boss at the time. So in the movies, obviously people are watching it. It's out there now. I know you've done a lot of promotion for it. What was Rob's background then, Sonny? He was a very intricate part of the movie. He seemed to have some good ideas. Where did he come from? And was he with Phil Knight for many years before your foray into the college basketball space there?
Phil was the personal lawyer for Blue Ribbon Sports, which was Nike before it was Nike. He's the one that won the law case when they were challenged by the people in China on stealing the things. So he was a personal friend, but a lawyer. He was basically my boss in that thing. He was with him from the beginning, and his role was, without Rob, I don't get to the drawing board with Phil. Rob and Peter Moore were the people who believed in it first, but Phil agreed to, once he accepted there was going to be Michael Jordan, he agreed to spend the money, and as you saw, it went up and up and up during the film. So, but Rob was very big, and Peter Moore was bigger because Rob had the strength to get it. We didn't know who it was going to be. I don't know what the hell would it have been if Michael wouldn't have come. Life, everything would have changed. The world would have changed if Michael Jordan decided Adidas, because the thought of Adidas doing something different it showed in a brief thing, but Adidas had no intentions of doing that. They were going to put him with the other superstars, and so was Converse.
Got it.
Who in the company would? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Who in the company was truly invested in the basketball leading up to that you could lean on leading up to the Jordan pitch?
Me, because they were only if you followed the timeline, the basketball that they were talking about that was successful was the college program that I did. I told you they had one team, and they gave me the money to go across the country, and most of it was driving across the country, especially when I was on the East Coast, and I paid the coaches. By 1984, when we had signed Michael, that was the most profitable part of the business. They weren't selling running shoes. It was shown in there. And why do I say that? Because by 1984, we were on the verge of winning our third national championship. One team, no one ever wore Nikes in the national championship. In the year before at Louisville, we had all four teams in the Final Four: Villanova, Georgetown, St. John's, and Memphis. That never. So they got invested in basketball, and the reason I was invited to this, because I said pay the coaches. There was none. Nike, nothing to do with an opinion, a fact. Those were the facts. When they put up on that board, we were in third place. We had 17% of the sales, and half of that was the college basketball program. And if you remember, both of you are a little older or you're a little younger, but we created if you went to Syracuse, you had orange shoes. You went to you had yellow shoes, green shoes. We had the colors match the uniforms and match the shoes for every school. And Peter Moore. But then by when I got rolling, after we signed Michael, Peter Moore with that design, the half hour of the show is, earth-breaking and just mind-boggling, because when Peter put the red in, when Peter had that design, and then at the end they give credits and they give it to Peter Moore, and forever he should live with that. That silhouette of the shoe, that poster will live forever. We'll be gone, everybody else will be gone, but kids will be buying that shoe. So Ron, to your question, basketball was an afterthought. All the other stuff out of that, no one. And there was even people that even try to deny that even when Peter was denied that once he left Nike with Bob Strasser, that he created the shoe. He made the first three, and then he and Strasser left the company. They started, eventually Adidas and all that. That's when I went in '91 after they fired me.
Understood.
And my second question: how was the meeting with Jordan's parents embellished for the movie?
Well, the meeting with Jordan's parents, we met, we talked on the phone. Okay, we had a lot of phone conversation, but at that time, no one was prepared for what was going to happen. The real strength in my meeting with Jordan, Michael's mother and dad, was after we signed in Oregon, because at the end of the movie, up until James's unfortunate death, not too far long after that, and then I was part of the family. I was part of the family, helping them with doing things with Nike and with other people. I was part of the family, when we did promotions with Michael. So I stayed at Michael's home. So I visited the family when they were on the West Coast or other places. So until this day with Dolores, we're still close friends. I knew everybody in the family. So the meeting afterwards, when the bond sounded, the first thing happened 3.5 months. That's all that took. So it wasn't time to have the personal things.
Got it. That makes sense. Sonny, a little more personal note on people in grassroots basketball. They know, that you and George or don't see eye to eye on things. Things have happened over the years. You and George raveling. Now this is taking place during the '84 Olympics. Michael's on the team. He's the star of the team. John Thompson's Bobby Knight, is the coach, and George is an assistant. With that meeting in Tony Roma's, how much influence did that have? Did you guys still have a lot? Obviously, you still had a lot of work to do after that. What credit goes there to George, and what was Michael's initial, either hesitation or you guys had a lot of work to do. What was happening there?
George Rowling was my best man at my wedding.
Sure.
Him and I got married about a month before, Jordan even come up. George was the assistant coach at the Olympic Games. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
When I found out, and I would not have found out unless they invited me to that meeting, that they wanted me involved to pick a player, and I didn't know, and obviously I wouldn't have known that Michael was going to be a player because everybody in the company was against it. So to go back to George Raveling, Rudy Washington drove Michael Jordan to me. George wasn't in the car. Jordan was there when George was close to him, and Michael said emphatically that he was involved. Well, he was, because if it wasn't for George, I knew no other way to get a hold of Michael Jordan other than George Raveling. And George did me a favor, and he got Michael to the thing. We had that meeting. When the meeting was over, George went a step away. Rudy took Michael back. I never saw George Rowling again connected to Michael Jordan for many, many years. George he was the assistant coach at the Olympic Games. So, but he did get him there. I never would have met Michael. That's the most logical thing, because I wouldn't know how to get a hold of him unless I'd have thought of something. Because even in a movie where you see Howard so close with him, Howard didn't know him. Howard's not that much older than Michael. He knew who he was because Howard was a great player at Maryland, but there was no other venue. When you saw the part where, obviously they didn't use Michael in any of the scenes with
Sure.
Tony Roma. You saw the outside. So George was involved. Never would have happened. But the rest of the things, until I'm fired or until he gets hired at Nike, and he ended up being very, very close to Michael, and he should. He did a good job. But George and I's problems didn't start in 1984. They started after that. So he was my friend, and that's it.
Of course. Makes sense.
I got two parts to this question. Now, Peter Moore, he did a great job with the design of the shoe. Were you waiting on the prototype like everyone else? And then...
well, go ahead. But I'll give you this answer, and you'll give me the second part.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll do that.
I had no idea I know less about shoes than anybody living today. My wife picks my shoes, whether they're whatever, even the tennis shoes, and I'm still So the only thing I was conscious of in that last scene there was the fine that David Stern was going to put on us, the $5,000, because that was another block that we had to overcome. So when everybody thought it was brilliant, I got to be very honest with your audience. I have no idea. I mean, it looked good, and Peter and I were just learning each other. I never dealt with Peter, on that level that we're doing, creating a new shoe. Peter was a genius, and when you saw him there, you really got a feel for him. He was different. He wasn't a public person. He was a very private person, and and you saw at the end the credits, they were worthy. Right. But second part, go ahead.
Okay. So what was the bigger pitch? Was it the shoe line, having Jordan have his own shoe line, or was the design just that impressive?
I think, from my ignorant part of it, the shoe line, I don't think you have a shoe line without the design, because that picture, the only thing I remember of it 40 years later, it actually happened inside when everybody picked it up. It was the color scheme, because the basic, Mr. Jordan, whether Mr. Jordan said it or David Falk said it, I have no idea, but that there was this rule that we had to overcome because of the 51% thing. That I knew about. And we were all, in fact, until Phil gave the okay, which he did. And it cost a couple, and he didn't know the 5,000 was coming and that. And the guy kept upping the ante. So whatever my situation is 40 years later, has nothing to do. Phil Knight took a minute or two, but he backed everything that we did. So without Phil, we can't do it. So let's understand that. And it was a great time in our lives. But the shoe, and I think the other thing that did it was the commercials after Michael. He had the best commercials in the world. They were like your Spike Lee's and everything else. And the one with the shoe, I can't ever forget it. Was bouncing the ball. They prevent us from selling you this shoe or wearing this shoe, but we can sell it. Blah blah blah. It was brilliant. And then Spike comes out with "Girl Gotta Have It." And all of a sudden, the whole world changed with that shoe and that advertising. It was a perfect thing. And then of course there was the greatest athlete at that time. Everyone can make your vote now, but Michael Jordan did spectacular things.
Got it.
And,
go ahead.
No, and one last question. That the line did 162 million that first year.
Yeah.
Right after he signed, what were your expectations?
Oh, the money?
Yes.
I had no clue it'd be like that. All I did was believe.
Yeah.
Go back to the first question. They gave me one question, and they gave all the 5 people in meeting that day one question. We ain't selling shoes. We're going to get 500,000, 250. We're going to split it between 3 guys. Well, that formula didn't work. We had a lot of good players. Moses Malone, George Gervin, they wore the shoe, before then. But no one paid attention. They were taking ads out in the back of Sports Illustrated. That's a fact. They put your picture back there, just like these companies said. But what it was, what I did, I fought for, well, if you're going to roll the dice, you got a safer bet. But that's what happens when you have a safer bet. You don't believe in your big bet.
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand. People, they keep asking me this question. Well, obviously, at that time, I don't know in fact, you saw one of the scenes where, where Phil sort of said, you're on the ropes here. You're supposed to come up with something. Well, I was never asked to come up with something like that. The greatest thing I think could have happened to my life is because it's documented. They asked me who. I said the kid. Who's the kid? The kid from North Carolina, Michael Jordan, which meant subconsciously I never had Michael Jordan in my mind because I didn't know what that day was going to bring. How could I have gone in there thinking of what I was going to say if I didn't know really what I was going to say? So I had an unbelievable faith in that shot. Now, when Matt Damon presented that shot to the audience in a film, I didn't do that to them. I always told them, I can only remember Michael by shooting that shot. I was at that game. Yeah. And they beat Georgetown. John Thompson was my best friend. Patrick Ewing and 3 other kids played in the Dapper Dan. They wore Nike. And Dean Smith, I never met him in my life. They were Converse. And Michael Jordan wasn't even invited to me as a high school player to play in the Dapper Dan. Michael was not the best. He was obviously the best player, but no one picked him. That kid that they said that went there first in the recruiting of Michael, the kid from Carolina or wherever he was.
Buzz Peterson. Yeah.
That they were. There was a bunch of All-Americans on there. Michael made McDonald's team as the last minute entry, and he was the best player at McDonald's and didn't get the most valuable player. He didn't get the most valuable player. So that's the other point I'm making. He wasn't the high school name that you knew then.
Correct.
The kid from DeMatha Catholic and he was great. He was absolutely great, absolutely true. But he wasn't the high school name at that time.
Yeah, that makes sense. There was something about him. You're saying that you caught his eye, and it probably drove him. Those nudges or those slights probably drove Michael himself, and you saw something. So after you signed him, you guys, what are some of the early promotional gigs you had to do, Sonny? And when did you realize? What was the moment you realized, like, wow, this is not just going to work. We're going to change this whole landscape with this. When did you, as we close, when did you know, wow, this is really changing sports marketing and the whole culture of sports?
Well, I didn't know they were going to change the whole culture, but what I knew was exciting. I think it was Macy's. We did one of the first signings of him, or one of those kind of places in New York. And I went with Michael mostly everywhere he went. So there were lines out like today is common, but they weren't common in 1984, 85, 86. They weren't common. Once those ads started coming out, he became, because he missed 50 games, I believe, his rookie year. So it wasn't like he came out of there and it was something that some of the deniers at Nike were at that time. Well, what if he gets injured? And my answer was, I believe, is pretty close to being honest 40 years later. What difference does it make if he's not the greatest? Now, Barkley was in there. He ended up signing with Nike eventually. A couple of the other guys were in there. They signed. But even Charles, at his greatest, and he is, okay, and he moved the needle for sure. But basically, Charles, could never have been Michael.
Yeah.
No one could ever have been Michael. That's the point. What he did, Charles was a hell of a player. He was, big and round and all these sort of things and a great player. But what Charles isn't and wasn't, he's charismatic. He sells because he's a popular individual. But what happens if you don't become the popular individual? You don't have commercials. You don't have all the other things that you had. Michael went on simply who he was on the court, and he started destroying. They weren't televising Michael Bull games. They weren't doing a lot of things at that time, but the ads did it. The ads told them. And then this kid started doing everything. And then when the dunk contest happened, the game was over. I mean, that was basically game set match.
Got it. Well, Sonny, we appreciate your insight on the movie and how that became to be. I know you're very excited about it. So it's a very good movie with the all-star cast. So real quick, what do you think about the cast? I mean, it's a really great cast, and we'll let you go. They certainly do a really good job.
Unbelievable. Everyone does the other guy. I mean, they're all brilliant. I mean, I thought, how can I have an opinion? But because she was basically the only woman in the whole thing, I can say Viola stands out because of her brilliance, because of the person that she's representing, Mrs. Jordan. It was a perfect fit for her to play, and Michael asked for that too, and that was a brilliant ask. I mean, she did it. The rest of it, I thought the guy playing David Falk was brilliant. I thought the one, Chris playing Howard White was brilliant. I mean, there's no one not good.
Yeah.
Like you said, Bateman. I mean, Ben did it. And we're leaving out Ben Affleck, right? And Matt Damon. I mean, am I kidding here? So,
yeah. Those are big-time actors. So we appreciate your time, Sonny. We'll let you go, but thank you. I appreciate everybody that watch Air, and I know you appreciate people watching it too. So thanks for your time.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Wow. That was a great interview with Sonny. Very informative, great storytelling. I like the part that he talked about just his gut feeling. I mean, talk about having a gut feeling and then hitting that big, being right. Like literally, it was all about his gut feeling and basically him just believing in Michael so much when nobody else really did. Like everybody knew he would be a great player, but he talked about, so what if he doesn't become the greatest? Like he's like, we're building something. We're gonna get behind this player.
Yeah.
I believe that he's gonna become great. And even if he doesn't, this is our marketing strategy and it's gonna hit. And he was just absolutely correct. So I just find it so incredible that he just went all in on this one guy, and to see what has happened from that day forward to now is just incredible. I really liked, when he was talking about just kind of meeting with Michael Jordan's parents. And another thing that I didn't mention from the movie is just Jordan's mom was so well put together, so much belief in Jordan and what he was going to do. And I think when Sonny portrayed his belief, to Jordan's mom, because she felt the same way and had the same desires, that's how he was able to make that connection. You know what I mean? Like they put Jordan to the forefront as if he was just going to be different, even though he hadn't done anything. Sure. And because his mom believed what he was going to do, that strategy worked. So I just, it's just super interesting. I like when he talked about the ads and the marketing strategy too. He hit on players like Charles Barkley, who super charismatic, super, people person, and just talked about how the strategy that they used for Mike wouldn't have worked with Charles because of his demeanor. Mike's personality and demeanor on the court was the biggest marketing tool for Nike in their ads. And that's how they drew the engagement. That's how they were able to get this shoe and have it blow up, because people wanted to just get a piece of Michael. He talked about just feeling like they could be like Mike when they put these shoes on. So it's an incredible story. The brand blew up. The sneaker blew up. Nike is still relevant till this day. And it's just crazy how, one man really kind of made this happen. And, what would the sneaker game be like if it didn't? That's like the biggest thing that kind of crosses my mind when I think about, kind of how things unfolded.
Yeah. Ani, what did you take from his interview and just the follow up, and obviously, they didn't know they were going to be that successful. Obviously, they probably had expectations, but they wildly met their expectations in year one, and then it just even got bigger from then.
Well, it was a joy just interviewing, just talking to him. It was my first time ever talking to Sonny Vaccaro, so it was just awesome. Hearing a lot about him, but like Chelsea said, just going with his gut feeling, and he didn't even really know. He was just like, "Hey, I'm just like I feel this is going to work," but like he didn't think it would get like this immediately, but just his confidence, just going through it, and the guys that kind of helped him throughout the way, he's still very appreciative of. I just think it's just an awesome story, and just like Chelsea said, where would we be today without that decision, without that going on? And he was just ahead of his time. Like Sonny was just ahead of his time. Just the ideas that he had about how to really get, like, he understood, putting up some money to get more money in the long term. He was just ahead of his time. That's really why I got just his ideas. He was so ahead of it, and that's where why Nike's where it's at today.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, obviously, I've talked to him many times. I got to go to his round ball game towards the end of it. It ran through 2007, and he even ended it at the right time. Like you said, he had the good timing. That was a great class to end it on. He was getting up there in age. I'm not sure he wanted to continue to, try to go at, the competitors, and he made his point and his mark. For me, I like you said, Ani, I was interested in behind the scenes who knew things like what he was talking about. And he kind of mentioned it. He's like, nobody really knew basketball. That was what I was there for.
Right.
And that was kind of showed in the movie. They had the draft board, and hey, we should give money to Mel Turpin, or should we give it to John Stockton? And that was pretty interesting. He was like, oh God, these guys, they don't listen, they're like, so I don't know. What would you think, giving the budget, 250K is a big budget then, that's probably translates to $1 million now, with inflation. But did you guys think that was like crazy, or like, hey, you have to change it? It seems like that the industry was stale, meaning, okay, we'll give this money to Dr. J, we'll give this money to Larry Bird, we'll give it to Moses Malone. Who cares? We're giving them their little fair share. They're making some cool ads. Like I didn't see anybody that was really like you said, Ani, innovative, like forward thinking. Did you guys kind of get that? Like they just had their low budgets and they were going to throw it at these players, and that's it.
Yeah, I think Nike kind of had to be like that at that time, because you're talking about Converse and Adidas being ahead of them. So it's like, okay, I mean, you can just keep throwing, you can split that bread and throw it to some people, but you're still going to be third. I think they had to do something different in order to trump the others. That's kind of what I got. Is like, if you're behind, like I'm third, I'm gonna be third anyways. If I split it up, so like let me go for the home run and just see if it goes. If it failed, at least you win for it. You can't do what everyone else is doing. They're ahead of you.
Correct. That's a good point. Yeah, you can't just stay in the status quo if you're third. So that makes a lot of sense. I just think he got to. The minute movies seemed like Bill Knight, like Sonny was kind of a pain in the ass with Bill Knight, because he didn't exercise. All these guys are from Portland. That was kind of where this, running space kind of got started. People were progressive. They were, forward thinking about how their health and that, But when it comes down to it, so Sonny's this, backroom guy that was, like to gamble on himself and others, and he wasn't interested in running or being in shape and that kind of thing. But at some point, Phil Knight knew, like, this guy knows what he's talking about. You know what I mean? Like, no matter how much he's a pain in the ass, or we have little arguments, like he knows what he's talking about, kind of thing. I think that movie tried to portray that, and it came through. in that. And for Sonny, like he had to get there. And I think the 2 points that for the movie that I wanted to know or know more about it is how did he connect with Phil and Nike as an event and as a basketball promoter and scout, because obviously he has his army of guys that he scouts, but his main thing is doing the event and making sure it runs off. Mm-hmm. And so what he mentioned was that Rob Strasser, the guy who's played by Jason Bateman, actually went to the 1977 round ball, kind of got a feel for it, and I kind of wanted to mention at that. And that was one of the most highly publicized games. Sonny mentioned that in an interview. The actual attendance was 16,649. They were drawing around that much of fans around that time, the late 70s. The game was at its peak, and that game, Gene Banks was probably the number one player, along with Albert King, who was Bernard King's younger brother. Albert King was already a huge name. He was a huge name, one of those huge names. He was from New York. Like, even at 14, 15 years old, he came out on Ripley's Believe It or Not. He came out on TV. Everybody thought he was going to be a star because Bernard was becoming a star at Tennessee and in the NBA, and Albert was really good at 14 years old. He was a prodigy. So Wayne McCoy was this big name, and Sonny actually invited Magic. Magic was kind of like up there as one of the top players in the country, and he chose to go to Germany to play in these Albert Schweitzer games, which was kind of like an 18 or 17 and under world tournament, and so he didn't get to play, but he invited him to the game. So they always had a connection, him and Magic. He appreciated that, and Magic actually played in the Capitol Classic. So Rob Strasser went to the game. Their relationship was formed. The key thing for them was that there was no early signing period. So these guys were making their decisions in March and April, and Sonny had a lot of influence with the coaches. Hey, I could put you, with this kid. You can have a meeting with him during practice. Like, that event was where the stuff went down, the audience, so to speak. Right. There was no November. There was no early signing period. So the big time players were announcing in March, maybe even, around that time. Let's say the game was in late March, early April. So that's how that became to be. And that's how Sonny came to yield so much influence, because he had the coaches, like you mentioned, with the Nike connection with outfitting them. So he's starting to pay them. So they're starting to trust him. He knew the players, and then the parents trusted him. That's another thing. The parents trusted him that played in the game. So then people started, the younger players said that wanted to play in that level, started knowing him and trusting him. So he wielded a lot of influence. So that's kind of where that what I wanted to know. So he learned Strasser. And then the second thing I wanted to know was, the thing with him not knowing Dolores, not knowing the father, not really knowing Michael. Like, how did he get in? And obviously George Raveling played an integral role. He was the assistant coach on the U.S. Olympic team that Jordan was a star of. And he probably had to shoot his pitch real quick, but it looked like Raveling was telling, because George and Sonny were longtime friends, that he was telling them the good virtues of Nike, even before they met up. So somebody had to tell something to Michael about Nike. What did you guys think from that? Like, Converse was there. They were kind of like the stronghold, and then you had Adidas. Did you guys get anything from the movie? Like, maybe Michael's, or did you think just his mom and Sonny were just that convincing?
I think it was definitely his mom. She seemed like the one in charge to me. I mean, that's kind of how they portrayed it in the movie. Yeah. And also too, because Nike took a different approach, that was what kind of allowed them to get in there. Because Jordan didn't have much interest. I mean, that's how they made it seem. They made it seem like, oh, there's no way, he's with Adidas all the way, Converse second. Yeah. But because Nike's pitch was so different, and because it played on the feelings of his mother, I think that's how, the connection that was, kind of established that made the deal actually happen. So obviously there was a lot of guys that, were integral in getting the meet, giving information, his parents are here, the mom's, heavily involved, like all that kind of stuff definitely plays a huge part. But I just think ultimately once they finally got the Jordan family in the room, it was the strategy of making it be all about him, which the other brands didn't take that approach. Adidas was like, hey, you're going to be, one of our guys, and, you can maybe get on the level of, Bird and Magic. Like, it was never about Mike. It's all about you. We're all behind you. It's hopefully you get to the level of some of our other great, players that we endorse and be a part of that good group. And Nike just said, we're all in on you, Jordan. So let's go. So I think that's what made the difference. And that's what his mom wanted. When his mom called and asked for those revenue shares, like that to me was just like, that call alone and getting that done changed the trajectory of sneaker deals and endorsements for all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Like
everybody going forward. Yeah.
Like, I just think about what if that didn't happen, like that may not be a thing, but she was the one who said, when my son's name is on this, like he needs to get a piece of that. Yeah. And that was huge. That was huge to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see Sonny was sweating bullets. Like, wait a minute, how's this gonna go down? Like, but it turned out to be the right choice. I wanted to get your opinion on this. A few things. And I'll go over the background of it after. But let's say Sonny stays with Nike and they're just blowing out the competition. Does the money still get real big? And I guess some people would say the greed, corporate greed. Like if Sonny doesn't go to Adidas and then later Reebok, and then Sonny takes his expertise and takes his Sonny has his contacts, his guys. He's all about loyalty, and some would say even loyal to a fault. You know what I mean? Like, does Nike having to keep up with Sonny at the other companies, and they have to, they're going back and forth to try to secure the top players, and then they start these, circuits, and then that comes later, and then they start to, Sonny takes his ABCD camp, and now Nike has its own Nike camp, and now there's more players at camp, and it gets bigger and bigger. Do you think the corporate corruption / greed continues to get bigger, even if Sonny would have stayed at Nike? And
I just think it would just be somebody else. I just think eventually it'd be somebody else that just takes on to those ideas and just
at another company
goes. Like I think it would still be corrupt, like how it is today. Just be someone else we're talking about.
Got it.
Some of the other stuff. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Because again, a lot of people made some good points, and if you want to know more about like Sonny, the corporate side of them getting to the players, the network of people they do, there's some good references, and I'll mention them now. Like Raw Recruits is a great book by Alexander Wolf, Armin Katan, 1991. Kind of lays out what Sonny did, his background, more detailed than the movie, because again, as we mentioned, the movie's a short period of time. It's only a 6-month time frame or whatever it took to sign him. And then So Influenced by Dan Wetzel even lays out in more detail, talks about Adidas' rise with Sonny there after he gets let go by Phil Knight. And then to Ani's point, even just the more and more younger influence on the junior high age kids and outfitting them with gear and things like that is Play Their Hearts Out by George Dorman. That came out in 2012. That talks about Demetrius Walker, the young man from Southern California who, and talks about youth camps and the corruption already now at a huge level it is now, where, you're maybe retarding these guys into thinking they've already made the NBA and that kind of thing. So that's one question I want to ask you. And then Chelsea, I'll follow up with you as well. It was a unique situation. Like you said, Chelsea, nobody really knew Jordan was going to become this. They knew he was going to be a great player. I think two people knew he was going to be a great player. Bob Knight, his coach from the Olympic team, and Ani is like, hey, I saw Michael Jordan. I'm going to go watch those games. The dude was just awesome. Like, he would have definitely took him higher than 3, but not everybody knew he was going to be the player he became. But like in creating him and then trying to find the next guy, we basically corrupted the system to finding the next guy. We're going to ruin the next Jordan before the next Jordan because of how we corrupt them on the way up from 11, 12, 13, 14. Like Jordan wasn't showered with gifts and gear and traveling the country at 12, 13 years old. So what do you think about that, Ani?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, now when a kid is really talented, you know, then you got like just the cameras and stuff, like kids are getting mixtapes at like 10, 11 years old and stuff like that. And just with, you know, these shoe companies get real aggressive early. You know, that's why you see some of these middle school tournaments and like, you know, how they travel and all that stuff. Like those shoe companies are looking at who's next. And it's just hard. Like I agree with you. Like you're kind of corrupting the next Jordan because anybody that could potentially be that is gonna be showered with praise and fame before they even get to high school. You know, like as we kind of seen, or even in their underclass years in high school, where Jordan didn't have that. You know, it was just more work, and it just kind of takes a special kid that with a special supporting cast to be able to block out all that. But I agree, like nowadays it's probably the next one has probably someone that could potentially be the next one. It's been hurt by how the system is today.
Yeah, they've been hurt a lot. Chelsea, do you share the same sentiments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the nature of things. You know, we're in a social media age, and ultimately it's a cycle. Even when you hit on somebody, you're always going to want to hit on somebody else.
Right.
But I think that's just kind of how it goes. You know, unfortunately, I don't even know if they'll ever be able to replicate another Michael Jordan. I feel like, you know, it just can't be done. But best believe people are going to try. So we're just going to see a continuous cycle of who can we get? Let's start early. Is it this kid? Is it this kid? You know, and we see that in stuff that's you know, endorsement and marketing related. We see strictly on the basketball side where Omani Bates is the next KD. Like it's always the next.
Yeah.
So that's just the nature of the game.
Yeah. And two things I wanted to touch on and before we wrap up is related to the movie, and I wanted to touch on a few things that followed Sonny. So Sonny, again, we're going through this timeline, and in 1991, Phil Knight lets him go, so he takes his camp, and his camp was great the first year away from the Nike umbrella, and Nike continues their camps, and he begins the big time tournament in Vegas in 1994. And that runs through 2007 when he's under Reebok. And then I mentioned that his connection to Magic. So when Magic retired, Magic shocked the world when he announced he was HIV positive. Sonny moved his game from Pittsburgh to Detroit, and it was named the Magic's Round Ball Classic. So it was under Magic's umbrella. That's when it became. It was on TV a lot. It was on ESPN, and it was doing really good. I think the game needed to change from Pittsburgh. The first 20 years was a Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania Keystone versus U.S. team. And the Pittsburgh team was strong. You know, I keep saying Pittsburgh. The Pennsylvania team was strong. They could keep up with the national team. And then, you know, they really couldn't keep up with them after so many years. Like they won the 77 game with Gene Banks and those guys. They won in 71. They won like the first one. They won maybe 4 or 5 times. And then Sonny realized to keep his, you know, growing the scope of it, he had to go to a national format, and then he eventually moved away from Pittsburgh. So we're saying that Nike was going to spend more money, and it goes into the two next superstars, and we're talking about the corporate greed and the at all stops, do it at all costs, get them at all costs. Sonny goes over to Adidas, and without really a lot of people knowing, him and Gary Charles, who now runs the big time, uses that name in Vegas, and Gary Charles is an event promoter, and he's still doing it, and that's one of Sonny's confidants. He's meeting every Sunday with Kobe Bryant and his family, Joe Jellybean and his mom, and they're courting Kobe for Adidas. Nike's not really kind of behind the 8 ball. Nike's got their cast of characters doing what they're doing, you know, to court the guys they have, and obviously Nike has a huge presence, as Chelsea mentions, because of the Air Jordan so wildly successful. So they signed him to Adidas. The Lakers pull this coup. They're meeting with Jerry West, and Gary Charles tells me the whole thing almost got blown up because when Kobe took Brandy to the prom, everybody starts following Kobe. Now, like, they were in New York and everybody's like, hey, that's the guy that took Brandy to the prom, you know, and they're like, no, this is gonna get ruined. He's gonna meet with Nike. He's gonna, you know, like the other companies are gonna get in there. It almost got foiled, you know, like the whole thing almost got foiled, but they eventually got it done. They kind of kept it under wraps. They were kind of keeping it under wraps, and then the Lakers, what they were doing, were kind of under wraps too. But they pulled off a great move, obviously, in drafting him at the right time. And then at that point, Nike said, hey, we're embarrassed. Phil Knight's like, this, Sonny beat us on this. This ain't going to happen again. I don't care what you guys got to do. We're the next guy. We're going to get him. You know, this can't happen again. What am I paying? Like, kind of like say, what am I paying all you guys for? And Sonny's beating us, you know, and got this gem. So, and then that leads into LeBron. But I wanted to ask you, Chelsea, as you're in junior high, maybe that time, early 2000s, and then go back to Jordan. They signed Adidas, great. Sonny pulls off this great move, but what was wrong with like the Kobe shoes? Why didn't it work for Kobe there at Adidas? What was there? I know you're more of a sneakerhead now, but what was up with the Kobe shoes? Me being in my 20s, late 20s, or whatever it was, and people being in LA, nobody really talked about the Kobe shoes. They talked about the player playing for the Lakers.
Yeah, well, Kobe actually had some decent shoes with Adidas.
He did.
I specifically remember wearing the Crazy 8s. That was one of my favorite Kobe Adidas shoes. But in general, I think it was just the marketing strategy. Like, everybody was still on Jordan. Everybody was still on the sleek designs and marketing of Nike. I think they just did the best job of branding and getting stuff out there. And I think it just made a difference. And we ultimately saw how Kobe transitioned to Nike, got bought out of his contract and went there, because they just had all the appeal. So, you know, I don't think Adidas, I think it was great that they were able to acquire Kobe, but ultimately I just think their marketing and the ascension of Nike just trending up, it was too hard to just kind of compete with that, especially at the time. Like, Jordan was still bigger than ever and Nike was just on top. So I think even the appeal for most athletes too was just wanting to be a Nike athlete. Like, especially in the basketball realm. I mean, we even see that today. All the quote unquote, you know, best players in the league, top players in the league are Nike athletes. And Giannis and KD and Bron and, you know, was Kyrie, maybe was Ja Morant. We don't know with his issues, but I really just think it was the marketing strategy. And when you already have a brand of that significance, it's easy to you know, kind of stay on top.
Gotcha. I just thought maybe a shoe that I saw and people kind of make fun of online, like, look at this is why Kobe left to Nike. Like, one of the shoes was just awful. It looked like a spaceship suit. I didn't know. You know, maybe
they didn't look as good, but
they didn't look as good.
Crazy Eights was a hit. I know it. Like, when I was in high school, people wore Crazy Eights all the time, and Adidas actually had some non you know, player associated shoes, like the Pro Model. The Pro Model was a big deal. People like those too. So they hit on some basketball shoes for sure. But I just feel like it wasn't close between Nike and I personally have never known a time where Adidas has been better than Nike.
Got it.
My generation.
Yeah. For Ani, is that kind of your sentiment as well, or was it just, you know, Kobe was like, hey, you know, this is not working out? I mean, Sonny pulled it off, but they couldn't sustain him. You know what I mean?
They couldn't sustain. I thought the shoe was cool, but I just thought it was like, I'm with Chelsea. Like, the marketing just wasn't where it needed to be. I mean, the plan wasn't going to sustain, wasn't going to be able to keep him. I thought they could have done a better job with the design. I thought they could have done a better job with the marketing. And I just think Nike, you know, kind of took that and ran with that, you know.
Got it. And then going back to the movie and to Jordan, as we're closing out here, you know, Chelsea, you mentioned the mother. Do you think, like you said, the pitch was terrific? It's all about you. We're gonna make you this Air Jordan. Well, now, what did you think of the design? Was like was that a like, wow, blowing people away, or is it more the pitch? Like, hey, we're probably gonna give you a piece of this action on this shoe, or do you think the design was pretty good?
I think it was a combination of everything: the pitch, the appeal, the design. You know, we saw in the movie where they're trying to play this video for Jordan, and it was super corny. And Sonny was like, "Cut it off!" And then he just gave just this great speech about we are all about you. We are all in on you. Like who wouldn't want to hear that? And then to hear that, you created a shoe, in my name, you're willing to pay the fines and everything associated with the shoe. Yeah. And here I am. I haven't even played an NBA game. Yeah. So I just think the stars really aligned in terms of just the strategy, the pitch, the appeal of the shoe, just every single thing that it's like, it was kind of an offer that, the Jordan family couldn't refuse. Like, long term.
Long term. It was just a good move.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And going more to current, again, we're talking about Phil Knight and Nike losing out on the Kobe sweepstakes, but they eventually gained him as a client and helped him rehabilitate his image after his unfortunate incident in Colorado, actually. So they did a great job there as well, I think. And around that time, LeBron's coming. So again, Sonny's with Adidas, and Adidas is hiring him to find the next Jordan. Obviously, that's what these guys are in the business for, as Chelsea mentioned. Yeah. And as you mentioned, you're trying to find the next Jordan, whether you're going to get him or not, right? So LeBron comes in. Now this is totally in a different sphere because people think he's going to be it. All three shoe companies know he's going to be it. All of them know by 8th or 9th grade that this is the guy they're going after. For Reebok offering a big amount of money, just knowing everything we knew by that time, Ani, were you really surprised that Reebok didn't have a prototype shoe for him? They just had mocks. Like, that is just not, like, how big this is going to be. You want this guy. Were you surprised? And Reebok threw a lot of money at him, probably the most. Were you surprised they just didn't have, like, mocks for him? You got to.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't have prototypes for him, especially like as bad as you wanted him. And you knew what worked with Michael, right? Like Chelsea touched on it. Like it was a combination of both that made it work. The line, and plus the design. If they had a really dope design for him, I think you probably would have gotten him. You throw all that money, at least have a design for him, like have something he can see, like, oh, you know what I mean?
Intangible that he can hold.
Yeah, I think that, I was surprised that they didn't do that. It's like, did they just think the money was just going to hit? It was just going to be more the selling point than the actual design. And, that was kind of surprised.
Yeah, I just thought, again, you don't know. Again, you're looking at Gloria James, and maybe they took that cue like, hey, Gloria James is steering the ship kind of like Dolores is, but that's wasn't as much the case. LeBron is like, yo, mom, we can't take this money. We need to go visit with the other ones, and we know we can't sign with Reebok tonight because that really did happen. Supposedly, their CEO gave, like, here, if you guys sign with us, here's a $10 million check tonight. Go cash it. And they were like, no, we can't do that, And then on the other flip side, Aaron Goodwin, who was LeBron's first agent, mentioned that, hey, he was an Adidas guy. Like, they wore St. Vincent St. Mary's wore the Adidas gear. LeBron went to Adidas events. He did play with the Soldiers, obviously, as well. But, like, they had the upper hand. And Sonny's over here telling the family and telling Gloria, it's going to cost $100 million to get you guys the day after his last high school game. This is what it's going to cost. And then, Adidas doesn't really put that in guarantee. Like, so my thing is, like, why would you be paying Sonny if you're not going to pay the guy he's telling you is going to be the next Jordan? That's what I didn't understand. I don't know, Chelsea, if you have a thought. Like, why are you paying this guy for years and years to be your marketing expert, and then the big moment comes and you're not offering him the guarantee? I'm just, like, flabbergasted by that. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think it's just a little bit of greed and a little bit of the risk. I mean, we even saw when Sonny was with Nike how they were like, whoa, wait, like all the money, you want all the money to one guy, so you're thinking about the risks, but you're not necessarily like thinking about the reward. And even when Reebok was offering Bron all that money, they thought because maybe, single parent home, impoverished, doesn't really come from anything. They thought, wow, they're just going to take money overall. But Bron was smart. He was thinking long term. He was thinking, I'm going to get it on the back end. So I can take a little bit less of a pay cut, but when I blow up and I do my thing, you're going to have to pay me even more. And so now he has a lifetime contract with Nike. He has a deal in place where as long as he's playing, he has to be the highest active player like on their roster in terms of everybody that's, making money. So they played it really smart. And I don't even know, like, I want to see a story on LeBron and his decision with his mom, because it just felt like LeBron just knew what he was doing. How did he know what he was doing? Like his mom said, "Come on, let's take the money, son." Like, but LeBron's like, hold on, like, this is business. And that's honestly just what it's about, really. Wow. Crazy.
Yeah. So the question I have for you, Ani, is, again, let's say Sonny pulls it off for the third time, right? Obviously, the money was Adidas didn't offer the guarantee. They supposedly offered like 65 or 70, whatever it is, guaranteed. The others incentives. Reebok offered the most, but Nike got it done. And our previous guest, Clark Francis, talked a little bit about that on his pod. We talked about player rankings and the history of that, and he was like, Nike was going to get it done. But in your estimation, even if Sonny does get it done for the third time, would he eventually have just moved over to Nike?
Yeah, he probably just moved over to Nike. Just depend on the marketing. I mean, if Reebok had like a real dope, prototype and hella marketing, may could have delayed what eventually was going to happen. But I think he would eventually just gone to Nike.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the moral of the thing, and it's very interesting how it all comes together. But yeah, I'm glad that the movie came out. People learned a lot. It was pretty informative. As Chelsea said, maybe a little long, maybe 10-15 minutes longer than it needed to be, but great movie. I'm glad Sonny came on to talk to us about it. I learned a little bit more of the background. I know you guys got to learn a little bit as well, so hopefully our listeners did as well. So I think on that note, I think we're going to wrap up. It was a great episode. It was fun just talking about that. I mean, I don't know what's next. Where do we go from here? Like, after LeBron, I just don't see after LeBron, how are you going to beat what LeBron did? No scandals, great, pretty much great guy, no family scandals, no off-court scandals, lifetime contract with Nike. Where do you go from here, Ani? Why are we even doing this? Why are we even
You just, I mean, that's why they say it's generational. I mean, hell, it's gonna be a minute. It's gonna be a long time till we see this again. So you just doing it, hopefully, like, you may find that one sooner rather than later, but it's gonna be a long time. Like, it's gonna be a long time till we see that again. And I just think people just kind of banking on, maybe they'll find the next one. He made them a lot of money. LeBron made people a lot of money, so people want to keep making their money. So that's why I think it's just that high doing it.
And Chelsea, we're talking about this draft coming up. That's we're obviously going to start preparing for that here in the next few weeks. Wembanyama, what do you do with him marketing? What do you do with his shoe deal? What can he do? He's supposedly this generational guy, and he's worldwide. People know him now on 2 continents, maybe 3 continents. I mean, he's got some advantages. Well, you're the marketing expert for the next year. What do you do with this guy? I mean, is he the guy? I mean, or is it just, we'll see?
I mean, he's definitely the guy. He definitely will probably be with Nike. And the interesting thing with him, like they've kind of done with Giannis, they need to tap into that international market.
Right.
They can take a different approach with him, but he definitely will be the guy. He probably will have a signature shoe. He's not going to exceed Bron, not going to exceed Jordan. I can't see that happening again in my lifetime. Like Ani said, it's a cycle. There always would be new players. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying the impact, the cultural influence, like I don't see that repeating itself. But this guy has an opportunity to kind of do something special. I don't think they really hit on it with Giannis like they could have. So maybe they'll use this kid. You tap into that international scene. I think overseas, especially because soccer is the most popular sport, like in Europe, and Adidas is kind of dominant over there. So let's see, if Nike could get in there and use Wemby and put him to the forefront and tap into another market. So I'm interested in seeing that happen. But will he exceed Bron, Kobe, Jordan? Absolutely not.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. So Yeah, it's gonna be obviously we'll follow it, and it's as LeBron's career is in the twilight, obviously this guy may be the one that is the next guy to kind of we're going to be talking about down the line. So again, we appreciate everybody listening to episode 163. Thank you for Ani Iman and Chelsea Hopkins, coming on, giving their expertise, watching the movie, kind of going through this. Like I said, we didn't even talk really about the NIL and the Ed O'Bannon and Sonny's influence. That we don't have time. We have to do that at another time. He's touched so much. But, we wanted to kind of mention those references. Again, he also has a 30 for 30 Soul Man. We talked about the books. Go listen to some of the episodes. That episode about Kobe Bryant where he gives his spiel and talks a lot about him is episode 54. The player rankings episode talks about all these guys is episode 131. So on that note, we're going to shut down shop. Until next time, we'll talk to you guys soon.